My family thought they could bully me into signing over my $300,000 Austin home, forged my name on a $15,000 loan, and secretly sublet my apartment for cash. I played nice, served them lasagna, and let them think they'd won. Then I evicted them, leaving them in a crumbling motel off I-35. This isn't just a story of betrayal. It's about the moment I stopped being their doormat and chose myself. Stick around to see how I turned their lies into my freedom. One calculated move at a time. Thanksgiving 2025 was supposed to be my victory lap. My first holiday in the two-bedroom house Lucas and I scraped every penny to buy in an Austin suburb, where the streets are lined with live oaks and the air smells faintly of barbecue. I spent weeks perfecting the vibe fairy lights strung across the patio, a pecan pie cooling on the counter, and a Spotify playlist humming low with indie folk. At 28, I'm a graphic designer who's clawed her way to stability. And this house, with its $300 monthly mortgage, is proof. Lucas, my 30-year-old software engineer fiancé, hauled in the turkey while I arranged a charcuterie board, my hands steady with pride. This was our moment, a bubble of peace we'd earned. I should have known my family would bring a pin to pop it. The kitchen smelled of sage and butter when my father, Frank, caught me alone. He's 58, a retired mechanic with a permanent scowl and a knack for turning joy into leverage. He'd been nursing a Lone Star beer, his third by noon, when he beckoned me to the garage. Claiming he needed help with a cooler, I followed, wiping my hands on a dish towel, expecting a quick errand. Instead, he shut the door, his eyes glinting like a man about to close a deal. "Put your sister on the deed." "Hannah," he said, voice flat as the Texas plains. "Just her name. It's no big deal." I froze, the towel slipping from my grip. My sister, Mia, 24 and allergic to responsibility, has been couch surfing at my parents' San Antonio apartment, her life a carousel of bad decisions and maxed out credit cards. I blinked, hoping I'd misheard. "You want Mia on our deed?" My laugh came out sharp, nervous. "What? So she can Airbnb my guest room to fund her vape collection?" Frank leaned closer, his breath sour with beer and resentment. "You've got this fancy house now." "Hannah, don't turn your back on family." The word family landed like a slap, heavy with the weight of every sacrifice I'd made for them. I'm the one who worked diner shifts at 16 to cover their bills, who co-signed their lease at 25 when Mia's failed startup tanked their credit. Yet here was Frank, acting like I owed Mia a slice of my life because she's blood. My pulse quickened, but I kept my voice even. "Lucas and I bought this house. It's ours. Mia's not part of that." Frank's face darkened, his jaw tight. "You think you're better than us? Huh, too good for your sister." His words stung, slicing open old wounds. I've spent years being the responsible one, the fixer, while Mia skated by on charm and excuses. Now, standing in my garage, I felt the familiar tug of guilt. But something else too, anger, hot and sharp. "It's not about being better," I said, my sarcasm slipping. "It's about not handing my home to someone who'd pawn the mailbox for gas money." Frank scoffed, his boots scuffing the concrete as he turned away. "You'll regret playing high and mighty," he muttered, leaving the door ajar. I stood there, the garage air thick with motor oil and betrayal, my hands trembling, back in the kitchen. The clatter of plates and cousins' laughter felt distant, like a scene from someone else's life. Lucas caught my eye from the living room, his smile fading as he sensed the shift. I forced a nod, but my chest tightened. This wasn't just a request, it was a declaration of war. Frank's words echoed, a warning I couldn't shake. Thanksgiving was supposed to be my fresh start. Instead, it was the spark that would burn my family's illusions to the ground. The kitchen clock ticked past 10. The Thanksgiving leftovers now tucked into Tupperware. The house quiet except for the faint hum of the dishwasher. I slipped into my home office, a cramped nook off the living room where I sketch logos and escape the world. The confrontation in the garage lingered like smoke, acrid and impossible to ignore. I sank into my chair, my gaze landing on a framed photo from my childhood, a faded snapshot of a Houston bungalow, its porch sagging under the weight of humid summers. That house, long sold to cover debts, held memories I'd tried to bury. Staring at it now, I felt the past clawing its way back, demanding I reckon with the obligations that shaped me. At 15, I was already the family's anchor, the one who balanced the checkbook while my parents bickered over late notices. My sister, 3 years younger, was their darling. Her mistakes brushed off as youthful rebellion. I remember her at 13, sneaking out to parties, coming home with smudged eyeliner and no apologies. When she totaled their old Civic at 16, joyriding with friends, my father just sighed and bought her a used Corolla. I was working weekends at a smoothie shop, saving for college. But somehow her chaos always took precedence. "You're the steady one," my mother would say, her voice heavy with expectation, as if my reliability was a debt I owed them forever. By 20, I was juggling community college and 2 jobs, my bank account a revolving door for family emergencies. One winter, my father called, his voice gruff with desperation. They were behind on utilities, facing a shutoff. I wired $500 my rent money and ate ramen for a month. My sister, meanwhile, was blowing her barista tips on concert tickets, posting selfies with hashtags about living her best life. I didn't resent her then, not fully. I told myself family was a team. That love meant carrying the load, but the load kept growing, and I was the only one lifting. A sharper memory cut through. From when I was 23, freshly hired at a design firm, my parents threw a rare dinner to celebrate. A potluck in their cramped San Antonio kitchen, I arrived with a store-bought cake, expecting warmth. Instead, my sister cornered me, her breath tangy with cheap wine, begging for $1, $200 to cover a business course she swore would change her life. I hesitated, my savings already thin, but my mother's pleading eyes tipped the scale. "She's trying." "Sweetheart," she said, as if I hadn't been trying my whole life. I wrote the check. The course was a scam, and my sister never mentioned it again. That night, I lay awake, the sting of being used sharper than the Houston heat. Those years taught me a brutal truth. My family saw my success as their safety net. Every milestone, every paycheck, was a resource to be tapped. When I bought my first car, a used Honda for $8,000, my father asked to borrow it for a quick job that stretched into weeks. When I landed a promotion, my mother hinted they could use help with a few bills. I gave. Not because I wanted to, but because I feared the guilt of saying no. The photo on my desk mocked me now, its faded colors a reminder of a loyalty that had chained me for too long. Tonight, the weight of my father's demand pressed harder than ever. Adding my sister to our deed wasn't just a favor. It was a claim on the life I'd built. A life where every $500 mortgage payment felt like a victory. I traced the photo's frame, my fingers lingering on the bungalow's porch, where I used to dream of escape, back then. I thought family meant sacrifice. That love was measured in how much you could endure. Now, I wasn't so sure. My sister's reckless entitlement, my parents' endless excuses, they drained me dry, and I was done pretending it was noble to bleed for them. A soft knock pulled me back. My fiancé stood in the doorway, his brow creased with worry. "You okay?" he asked, his voice a lifeline. I nodded, but my throat tightened. I couldn't tell him everything. Not yet. The garage ambush was just the start, a crack in the dam I'd built to hold back my family's chaos. As he left, I turned back to the photo, my resolve hardening. The past had shaped me, but it wouldn't own me. Not anymore. I'd given enough. Black Friday morning broke with a crisp chill. the Austin air sharp enough to cut through my sleepless haze. I stood in the kitchen, clutching a mug of coffee gone cold, replaying the garage standoff in my mind. My fiancé, stirring cream into his cup, broke the silence. "We need to shut this down," he said, his voice steady but firm. "Your sister on our deed. That's a non-starter. She'd sell our porch swing for crypto." His pragmatism grounded me, but my stomach churned at the thought of facing my family again. We agreed to deliver the refusal together, choosing a diner brunch as neutral ground, hoping the clatter of plates and public eyes would keep things civil. I should have known better. The diner, a retro spot off South Congress, buzzed with post-Thanksgiving chaos families in sweatshirts, waitresses dodging sticky-fingered kids, the air thick with grease and syrup. We arrived early, claiming a booth by the window. Its vinyl seats cracked like my nerves. My parents walked in 10 minutes late, my sister trailing behind, her phone glued to her hand, thumbs dancing over some TikTok trend. My father's eyes locked on me, his stride heavy, like he was marching to war. My mother, ever the peacemaker when it suited her, offered a tight smile, her purse clutched like a shield. I sipped my water, bracing for impact. We ordered pancakes and eggs, the small talk as brittle as the bacon. My fiancé nudged me under the table, his signal to rip off the Band-Aid. I cleared my throat, my voice quieter than I meant. "We've talked about the deed thing. It's not happening. This house is ours, paid for with our sweat. Your daughter's not part of that equation." The words hung there, heavier than the diner's fluorescent hum. My father's fork paused midair, his face reddening like a warning light. "So that's it," he barked, loud enough to turn heads. "You're cutting us out, acting like we're strangers?" My mother's hand fluttered to her chest, her voice a practiced whimper. "We're drowning, sweetheart. You're sitting pretty while we beg." My sister, silent until now, tossed her phone down, her pout weaponized. "It's just a signature. Why you gotta make it a whole thing?" Her whining grated, each word a reminder of her endless free passes. I leaned forward, my sarcasm sharp. "Because your name on my property isn't a favor. It's a heist." My father slammed his fist on the table, coffee sloshing over the rim. "You think you're above us now, living in your Instagram dream house?" Spitting on family. The diner went quiet, forks hovering, strangers' eyes boring into us. My heart jackhammered, but I held his gaze, refusing to shrink. Outside, the confrontation spilled into the parking lot, the November sun harsh on my skin. My father rounded on my fiancé, his voice a growl. "You're the one feeding her this garbage. Aren't you turning her against us?" Before I could react, he shoved my fiancé hard, his hands colliding with a chest that didn't budge. My fiancé stayed calm, stepping between us, his voice low. "Back off. Now." I screamed, my voice raw, shoving myself in front of my father. "Get out. You don't get to touch him." My mother wailed, clutching her purse, while my sister smirked, leaning against their rusty SUV, as if this were just another Tuesday. We drove home in silence, the city blurring past, my hands trembling on the wheel. The diner's public stage had stripped away any pretense this wasn't about helping my sister. It was about owning me, about dragging me back into their orbit of chaos. My fiancé reached for my hand, his touch steadying me. "We did the right thing," he said. I nodded, but my chest ached. I'd expected anger, maybe tears, but not this. Not violence in a parking lot under a cloudless Texas sky. The line had been drawn, and I'd crossed it. Shouting back for the first time in my life? But as our house came into view, its fairy lights still twinkling, I knew this was only the beginning. My family wouldn't let go without a fight, and I was ready to give them one. December's chill settled over Austin, frosting the windows of my home, but the cold felt personal. Like the universe was siding with my family's vendetta. The diner brawl had left bruises. Not on my skin, but on my peace. And the weeks since were a slow-burning fuse. My parents didn't back off. They doubled down. Their tactics shifting from loud demands to something sneakier as similar. My mother took to Facebook. Her posts cryptic, but cutting blood should mean something. But some kids forget their roots. My sister, ever the opportunist, slid into my texts with a performance of sisterly warmth. "Hey, let's fix this," she wrote. Her words dripping with fake sincerity. "Just add me to the deed, and we're good. No drama." I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the block button. My sarcasm itching to reply, "Sure, and I'll throw in my 401k for your next pyramid scheme." Instead, I ignored her. But the pressure was a vice. Squeezing tighter each day. My fiancé saw it coming before I did. We were sprawled on the couch, a half-empty pizza box between us. When he paused the TV, "This isn't just petty drama," he said, his voice low, like he was defusing a bomb. "They're building something. A case, maybe? We need to start saving everything." His words landed like a punch, practical but chilling. I pulled up every text, every voicemail, every vague book post, archiving them in a folder labeled Family Circus. It felt absurd, like I was starring in a bad Lifetime movie. But his instincts were sharp. And I wasn't about to bet our $300,000 house on my family's sudden redemption. The real gut punch came a week later. When a routine credit card application got declined, I called the bank, expecting a glitch. But the rep's voice tightened. "There's an issue with your credit report," she said. "A recent loan in your name." My stomach dropped. At my desk, I pulled up the report, and there it was, a $15,000 RV loan, co-signed with my sister, dated 6 months back. The address listed was my parents' San Antonio apartment. The phone number one I hadn't used in years. The signature not mine. Forged. Sloppy. Like they didn't even try to hide it. I sat there. The screen blurring. My anger a wildfire. I remembered a vague tax form my father had me sign 2 years ago, swearing it was a one-time favor. I'd trusted him. A mistake that now felt like a blade between my ribs. They hadn't just crossed a line. They'd torched the whole damn map, digging deeper. I found something worse. My parents hadn't paid rent on their apartment since June, despite my auto payments covering it. A call to the leasing office revealed the truth. My sister had been subletting the place on Craigslist, pocketing $1, $200 a month while I footed the $900 of rent. The tenant, some college kid, thought she was the landlord. My blood boiled, my sarcasm barely containing the rage. "Brilliant," I muttered. "She's running a side hustle on my dime, probably calling it entrepreneurship." The betrayal was a masterclass in audacity, a neon sign that my family saw me as a mark, not a daughter. I called a lawyer the next morning, a woman named Carla who specialized in family disputes. Her office smelled of coffee and old books, her voice calm but blunt. "Property fights get ugly fast," she said, scanning my documents. "The deed's airtight, but this RV loan is fraud. File a report, and don't engage with them." I nodded, my resolve hardening. "They thought I'd cave," I told her, my voice steady. "They forgot I'm the one who built this life." She smiled, jotting notes. "Let's make sure they remember, back home." I poured a glass of wine. The bottle's $12 price tag, a small rebellion against my family's chaos. My fiancé sorted through our evidence, his laptop glowing in the dark. "We're not just defending," he said. "We're going on offense." I clinked my glass against his, my mind racing. The forged loan, the illegal subletting. They weren't just betrayals, they were weapons. My family had played their hand, thinking I'd fold under guilt. They didn't know I was done dealing their cards. I leaned back, the wine bitter on my tongue, and planned my next move. They wanted a war I'd bring a reckoning they'd never see coming. January's gray light filtered through my living room. The Austin winter more mood than temperature. The past month had been a siege. My family's lies piling up like unpaid bills, forged loans, secret sublets, and social media jabs meant to shame me into submission. But I wasn't the same daughter who once paid their debts with a smile. My fiancé and I had built a fortress of evidence. Every text and bank statement a brick in our defense. Now, it was time to strike back. Not with screams or tears, but with a plan cold and precise as a surgeon's blade. I wanted them to feel the weight of their own choices. To learn that my life wasn't their ATM. The idea came over breakfast. The kitchen smelling of burnt toast and resolve. Invite them over, I told my fiancé, my voice steady. A dinner, all smiles. Let them think I'm folding. His eyes narrowed, catching the glint in mine. You're playing chess, he said, grinning, and they're stuck on checkers. I texted my mother first. Keeping it brief, dinner next week, I want to talk. Her reply was instant. Syrupy with false hope. That'd be lovely. Sweetheart, I'll bring brownies. My father and sister agreed, no doubt smelling victory. I let them believe it. My sarcasm simmering. Sure, I muttered. Setting the table days later. Come for lasagna, leave with reality. The dinner was a performance. I lit candles, their flames flickering like my restraint, and poured cheap Merlot into mismatched glasses. My fiancé played his part, all polite nods, while I served steaming plates, the kitchen warm with garlic and pretense. My parents arrived late, my father striding in like he owned the hardwood floors, my mother clutching a Tupperware of store-bought brownies, her smile brittle as old plastic. My sister slouched behind, scrolling her phone, her entitlement louder than her knockoff sneakers. We ate. Their small talk a minefield, my mother's sighs about tough times. My father's grumbles about rising gas prices. My sister's vague pitch for a new venture. I let them ramble, my fork tracing circles in the sauce. Halfway through, I leaned forward, my tone soft, calculated. I've been thinking about our fight, about family. I said, maybe there's a way to share, to help everyone. My father's eyes lit up, a smug twitch at his lips, the same look he'd worn when I paid their electric bill at 19. My mother nodded eagerly, her voice a coo. That's all we want. No more fighting. My sister perked up, her phone forgotten. I dangled the bait, mentioning options for assets, watching them salivate like dogs at a butcher's counter. My fiancé shifted, feigning discomfort. His silence part of the script. We ended with forced hugs, their footsteps light as they left, convinced they'd won. The next morning, I flipped the board. I drove to San Antonio, the $900 apartment lease still in my name. A fact I'd overlooked until the subletting scam surfaced. With my lawyer's blessing, I terminated it. My signature on the paperwork a declaration of war. I delivered the eviction notice myself, pulling up to their complex at dawn. The buzzer still listing me as a tenant. My mother answered, bleary in a faded robe, coffee mug in hand. I handed her the envelope. My voice ice. 30 days to vacate. Non-payment. Lease violation. I'm done covering your rent. Her jaw dropped, the mug trembling. But dinner, she stammered. You said... I cut her off. I said what you wanted. This is what's real. My father appeared, silent for once, his glare hollow against the truth in my hands. The fallout was instant. My phone lit up with their panic. My mother's voicemails, tearful and pleading, my father's texts, sharp with threats, my sister's whining, claiming I'd ruined everything. I didn't respond. My resolve was a steel wall. We filed a fraud report for the $15,000 RV loan, the police taking my statement with board efficiency. A restraining order was issued when my sister showed up at my office, escorted out by security. That night, on our patio, the fairy lights glowing softly. I raised a glass to my fiancé. To consequences, I said. The wine sharp on my tongue. The battle wasn't over, but I'd drawn blood, and it felt like freedom. March painted Austin in soft greens, the live oaks outside my home budding with a promise I finally felt. 2 months had passed since the eviction notice landed, and the silence was a gift. Not the tense hush of waiting for the next blow, but a stillness that settled into my bones. My family's chaos had receded, their calls and texts dwindling to nothing. Like a storm that had spent its fury, the 300-thair Joller house, once a battleground, was mine again, its walls free of their shadows. I stood on the patio, coffee steaming in the morning chill, and breathed in a quiet that wasn't just absence, but presence. A life reclaimed. A chance encounter at a downtown coffee shop brought news. A distant cousin, one of the few still speaking to me, sipped her latte and shared the update. My parents and sister had landed in a rundown motel off Interstate 35, its neon sign flickering like their prospects. My sister scraped by on gig apps, delivering takeout in a borrowed car, while my parents leaned on food pantries, their pride too brittle to ask for more. They're telling everyone they'll bounce back, my cousin said, her voice soft. But no one's buying it. I nodded, stirring my cappuccino, the foam swirling like my thoughts. Pity flickered, but it didn't take root. Their choices, not mine. Had built that motel room, the news didn't haunt me as it once might have. I drove home, the city's skyline fading in my rear view, and felt a clarity sharper than the Texas sun. My family had always framed their demands as love, their manipulation as duty, but I saw it now for what it was, a transaction I'd paid into for too long. A letter arrived days later, my mother's handwriting shaky on thin motel stationery. We messed up, she wrote. Her words a half apology, tangled in excuses. We just wanted better for her. I read it once, then slid it into a drawer, my heart unmoved. Forgiveness wasn't a door I needed to open, it was a weight I'd already shed. My fiancé and I turned our focus forward, planning a small wedding for summer. Just close friends and a food truck under string lights. The house felt lighter, its rooms no longer braced for uninvited knocks. I walked the halls, touching the scuffed baseboards we'd painted ourselves, the kitchen counter we'd saved for with overtime checks. Every inch was ours, earned through choices my family could never understand. One evening, as we grilled burgers on the patio, he asked what I was thinking. I smiled. The answer was simple. Nothing heavy, I said. Because it wasn't. The past was a closed book, its pages no longer mine to carry. To anyone caught in the tug-of-war between self and kin, I'd say this family isn't a blank check for pain. Love without respect is a trap, and you don't owe your peace to anyone, not even those who raised you. I used to think cutting them off was betrayal, that protecting myself was selfish. Now I know it's survival, the kind that lets you wake up without dread. My victory isn't their suffering, it's this life, this home, this moment where I choose what matters. You can too. Demand better. Redraw the lines, and don't apologize for locking the gate. That night, I stepped onto the patio, a blanket draped over my shoulders, the sky a spill of stars above the suburbs. The air was cool, carrying the faint hum of cicadas, and I sipped coffee, its warmth curling through me. My family was out there, somewhere, blaming the world for their fall. But their voices no longer reached me. I'd spent years being their anchor, their ATM, their excuse. Now, I was my own. The stars blinked, indifferent and free. And I raised my mug, not to revenge a regret, but to the road ahead. I wasn't done choosing myself. And I never would be.